What is up, fellow sickos? I'm Dan Favale coming at you with another 2025-2026 NBA season look ahead. We're on to the New Orleans Pelicans, which means I am joined by Shamit Dua of the In the Know Substack, the In the Know podcast. The links to both of those things can be found in our podcast and YouTube description of this episode. Follow him on the social machines at Fear the Brown, spelled exactly as it sounds. Shamit, how the heck are you doing? Thanks so much for coming back.
Dan, I'm doing well. I love that this has become an annual tradition, and I genuinely look forward to it before the season starts. But I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing well. I am going to say I'm a little, I don't know if it's sick and tired or just exhausted from, I feel like each season we enter this with the Pelicans as being one of the most confusing teams or toughest teams to pin down, both in terms of their short-term priorities and direction and potential, and then also big picture stuff. It's going to be another one of the, for me at least, it's just going to be another one of those seasons. And so I have to start by asking you, what do you just make of their direction following everything that happened this offseason?
I think if we're being truthful, there is no real direction here. I mean that genuinely because on one front, they have a very public and vocal commitment to Zion Williamson. And when you do that, you have to try to be a good team and you have to try to win because that player is very good, despite everything else that comes with Zion. On another hand, they are investing heavily in young players and rookies that they very much like and are excited to have in their building. And so, we just saw the Warriors try this two timeline sort of thing, and it didn't work out well for them. And I don't anticipate it really working out for the Pelicans in that I don't think they can thread the needle of being competitive and developing the young players. I think they have to pick a direction. What I do think is that if they reach a point where they're like, we have to move Zion Williamson and we're just going to lean into the youth movement, that's not something they're going to be upset about.
Which I guess is fine, but when you trade for Derik Queen by giving up an unprotected pick in 2026, that complicates the whole like, oh, we're gonna go lean into a longer term approach. And you had a fantastic piece on the In the Know Substack about like all the events surrounding that trade. We're 2 months removed from the situation now. Have your thoughts or intel on that changed at all?
No, I wish my thoughts had changed. I wish the intel was changed. It was a very tough situation in the draft, in that I think they made a poor trade. I think they didn't properly assess the risk associated with that trade. However, their belief is that they did the homework with regards to Queen extensively. Troy Weaver spent a lot of time while he was in Washington watching Queen while he was in Maryland. Troy Weaver's son was a graduate assistant on that staff. So they have a very good idea, in their opinion, of what kind of player Queen is, and they're betting on that upside. And they believe that they got a top 5 player in this draft, and he would be a top 5 player in the next draft. So they're just taking out in advance and getting this player in now. And so obviously I think the majority of the basketball world doesn't agree with the expenditure to go get Queen, with regards to that unprotected first round pick the following year, which is the best of New Orleans and Milwaukee. So there's 2 futures kind of tied to that pick. And frankly, I don't think the team anticipated there to be such a big backlash with regards to a trade. I think they thought that this would be a fairly standard trade, and there'd be people that have opinions on both sides of it, but that's how trades work. But I think the basketball universe kind of collectively coming together and reacting in a way that was so strong. It was like, oh my gosh, like what is going on? I think that caught them off guard, and so they're going to have to deal with the consequences of that this coming year. Whether if they're trying to be a good team, hopefully they make the playoffs, and that's not a good pick they're giving up. But if they're not a good team, then hey, that's the route they chose.
Yeah, and we hammered them on this podcast like everybody else, and I'm not even trying to relitigate just so much as I'm still trying to wrap my head around like what would need to happen with Derik Queen for this trade to be worth it, because it could be the Luka Doncic trade. Like the Mavericks could have won the championship this season after making that trade, and they still would have lost the trade, because it's why not get a bigger haul, or why is this the asset you gave up? And I know they like Jeremiah Fears, but I kind of landed, well, if you thought Derik Queen was a top 5 player and he was available when you had another high draft pick, why not use it on him? And so I just, like, how good would Derik Queen need to be? And he's dealing with a wrist injury too, so like that's going to be another variable in this. But I don't even know how good that he could be right out of the gate for people's. I guess the team itself could just be better than expected, and if you wind up giving the 17th pick or something, is a lot different than we just sent like the 9th pick out.
Yeah, look, I want to be very clear. People should get used to separating the outcome from the process with regards to this trade. Like, I think Derik Queen could become an MVP, and I would still say the process of what they did was wrong, because they could have reached the same pick. They could have drafted Derik Queen for a much cheaper price. All they had to do was put protections on it, or, you know, try to introduce a different pick, or just do any kind of thing that protected them on the backside. Because I think if you were to take this exact pick that they traded and you were to shop it around the league, and you'd be like, all right, we're trying to trade this pick, the value that they could have gotten back would have been greater than the right to jump from 21 to 13, which is what they did. So with regards to that, it's like, yes, it was an overpay. You know, it's like going to a sandwich shop and you spend $100 on a sandwich and you're like, man, this actually was an amazing sandwich. But it's like, why'd you spend $100 on that sandwich, right? Could have got it for $6. But what I think is that there is a world, and at the same time, it's not fair to judge Derik Queen by this trade either, because
Right.
I think a lot of people are going to place a lot of expectations on him, or just tie like the management's decision making to his career, which I think are two separate things. Like, again, he can become an MVP, he can become an all-star, he can become a really good player in general. And, you know, like at 13, if the Pelicans just had the 13th pick and they selected Queen, I think that's a perfectly fine selection. I don't think that's a reach. I think, you know, if they hadn't arrived at 13 the way they did, no one would be talking about this.
Right.
And so, yeah, so I don't think, you know, his career or his, like, I guess, next season or next couple of seasons really change how this trade is going to be viewed. But I do think there's going to be some like bad faith actors who, like, if Queen has a strong career to start, or he has a really bad career to start, they're gonna like talk about the trade in a certain light, and I just don't think those two things are particularly relevant given all the information that was available at draft time.
No, we need to do a better job, everybody, of just attaching. It's the same thing with contracts, where if there's a good player but they sign a contract that you don't deem a good value, or that they're overpaid, and people all of a sudden can't admit that they're still like a valuable player that's just overpaid.
Yeah, for sure.
So moving aside from the actual trade, and then also now this wrist injury he's dealing with, what are like sort of your early impressions of Derik Queen?
I was a big fan watching him throughout the season in college. He was just one of those players who, every time he stepped out on the court, it's like, oh my God, he's doing something incredibly fun at his size that a lot of players just typically don't do. He also just produced in terms of like points, rebounds, like assists, and he had a really good impact on that Maryland team. And obviously, you know, he hit that game winner. Man, hold on, am I blanking who it was against? But anyways, he came up big in moments that mattered against that team, and he was a very fun watch. However, he comes with a lot of, we're going to frame it as improvement areas, because we don't know what it's ultimately going to look like. But a big improvement area for him is conditioning, and the conditioning allowing him to run that motor hotter than it's been, in terms of getting back in transition, or simply getting down in stance and guarding someone, or making a rotation. You know, going after, making multiple contests on a single defensive action, things of that nature. I think gets really excited and really involved when the plays are going through him on the offensive end. And you kind of see that a lot with young players. Like, okay, like they have the ball, they feel engaged, they're doing things, but in the NBA, the system is not going to be built around that player. And so it's going to be imperative for him to find ways to contribute, and contribute with a ton of effort when inevitably the ball is going through Zion Williamson or Jordan Poole or Trey Murphy or whoever, right? Or even Jeremiah Fears, who is his rookie classmate.
My impressions of him are just based entirely off summer league, and I go entirely off vibes during some. I don't care about the efficiency. I by and large don't care about the turnovers. I'm excited about the stuff that, as just a big man with his size, that it looks like he can do with a live dribble. Even if there's room for the handle improvement, even if there's room for the processing speed on his passes, I think that he's going to end up being a really, really good offensive player in the NBA. And if there's, if he's able to expand out to the 3-point line consistently, that's going to make him even more dangerous. I'm curious about the conditioning stuff just because I know everyone was not happy with the transition defense or defense overall in summer league, but as like an actual player, I am super intrigued by him. I'm also though just curious, like, what do you make of his fit with Zion Williamson? And it's not to say, you already mentioned this at the top, that the Pelicans view Zion as the entire future of the organization necessarily. I go back and forth on like there feels like I don't want to say redundancies, but problem areas. And then I go back and look at all like the other bigs that Zion has played alongside his career, and then part of me can't bring myself to care.
Yeah, I think you're spot on with that assessment. That I think Zion is so talented that he finds a way to make it work, and not just make it work, like excel with any kind of big. And frankly, I think we haven't really seen Zion with a true stretch big, so we can't know that for sure what that looks like. But I think Zion to this date has been at his best when he's paired with a big that can rebound the crap out of the ball, like just someone that inhales rebounds, because that is a weakness for Zion, and that is a strength for Derik Queen. He was one of the leading rebounders in all of summer league, despite being out of shape. I think he averaged a double-double in the short time he had before his wrist got injured. And it was mind-boggling watching him. And you're like, oh my God, this dude's like not moving on the court. And you look up and it's like, all right, he fell into 15 and 13. Like how? It's like so that's the level of talent that you're working with. So I think offensively, it's going to be just fine. Zion has had no issues with the spacing with regards to those bigs. And what's going to inevitably happen is I think it's going to force other teams to play bigger. And it's going to be tougher to guard Zion with smaller players, because when they run actions involving those two, you're going to have to switch it. And that's a lot of physicality that you have to deal with, because both players love just banging around in the paint. And it's not from standstill positions like they're posting up. They're driving and throwing their shoulders around, and so it's going to be tough for a lot of teams to deal with. And I don't think we're going to see it for 30 minutes a night, but it'd be nice to kind of introduce that early on and grow into it. If Zion is your future, which I think is more of a marketing scheme than anything else, if Zion is your future and those are guys you invest in heavily, then it is like an organizational responsibility to play them together and go through the trials and tribulations of figuring out if they work or not. Because ultimately what you're doing is these are bets on extreme right tail outcomes. The right tail outcome that Zion's going to stay healthy and produce at the level that he's capable of. The right tail outcome that Derik Queen is a top 5 player in both of these drafts. The right tail outcome that Fears is someone that is also a top 5 player, because that is a valuation they had on him. And so it's like, cool, if all of these ceilings hit, yeah, this could end up being incredible. And now you're locked into a core that is frightening to match up again. But it's the floor is just as low. Like it is, if not lower, the floor is just as low with this grouping.
What I also find fascinating about this is because they're at least incentivized. I won't even say internally. It just seems, again, the read is that they think they're going to be pretty good. What type of role do you expect when he's healthy, Derik Queen, to have on this team out of the gate during his rookie season, knowing that there's at least a modicum of immediate expectations in the building?
Well, it's super tough because there is a whole Willie Green factor that is going to come into play here. Green
you tell me Willie Green doesn't always want to play his young players? Is that
no? Surprising, especially if they don't play defense. Which is like, look, Green is in a tough situation heading into this season. He is entering the final year of his contract, and
didn't he just get an extension in 2024 too? So was it just like we tacked on a year? I thought that was the reporting.
Yeah, they had some like option. Well, the extension, I think the report came out in 24. The extension like happened like in the past before that report came out, and it was just a delayed, like, oh, by the way, he got extended. But it was one of those things where when they made the playoffs, it like triggered like additional years and things of that nature. And so like he has 1 year left, and there is another option actually at the end of this year, so they could technically pick up that option and have it 2 years left. But to my knowledge, that option has not been picked up, and so he's heading into the season as a lame duck. To my understanding, and I'll stand by this reporting, he has been mandated by Gail Benson to Joe Dumars that you have to keep him around for now. For now is key, because I can see a world where things don't start off great in the middle of the season and Willie's gone. And so I think Willie is probably aware at this point he's coaching for his job. And if he's coaching for his job, is he going to play the rookies? I don't know, because coaching for your job could also mean listening to your bosses and playing the rookies because they're telling you to play the rookies. So he is I think he's in a no-win situation, because he has the expectations of delivering wins and being a competitive team, especially because they don't have their pick this year. And he's been handed these two rookies that are not the style of players that he typically enjoys playing. You know, the rookies that he's given a lot of minutes to out the gate are like the Dyson Daniels and Herb Jones of the world, where he's like, I'm going to throw you out there and I know you're going to be great defensively and we'll figure out the rest. Where it's now, these are two very, very, very talented, offensively talented rookies that, you know, typically Willie Green's approach on offense holistically has been, we're just going to let our stars cook. And that's not uncommon in the NBA. Like that's a lot of times that's what it boils down to, but he's going to be tasked to bring more out of the roster offensively, which I think has fallen short with regards to the talent that's been on the team in years past. And so, yeah, if he can't deliver on that, I can just see you're 3 weeks into the season and the seat's getting really, really hot.
Jeremiah Fears, early impressions of him maybe extending beyond. I mean, like, that dude just has a lot of on-ball thrust. Like, that was clearly evident. And I come in with very little priors on these guys, so seeing him in Summer League was, like, almost revelatory for me. And they should hang a banner for him playing in every Summer League game. No other lottery pick did that, right? So I was not a Jeremiah Fears guy coming out of the draft, but I think he's going to end up being fine as a finisher around the rim, and some of the shots he can get off are incredible. And just, again, that on-ball speed is insane.
Yeah, look, I think the theme with Fears and Queen is that they've taken these talent plays on dudes who aren't traditionally, like, in terms of like their size and position and role, successful NBA players like right now. Like, they're not in vogue. Like teams are moving away from the small guard who can't really shoot. Teams are moving away from that positionless big who doesn't really play defense at either position. So, like, they want versatility, they want size, they want mobility. And these two players are very much bucking that trend of like, no, we believe that these players are going to be so good that they're going to contribute. And with Fears, I'm actually pretty optimistic with him. I think there are two traits that are really inspiring to me. One of which we didn't see too much in Summer League, but the first trait is he gets to the free throw line like a menace, and he shoots really, really well. And I think that is a prerequisite if you want to be a star in this league, but it's a prerequisite if you're a small guard. You have to live at the line. You have to find a way to score points that inevitably doesn't involve you shooting a bunch of touch shots over 7-footers with insane wingspans. The second thing is, which was more prevalent in college than it was in Summer League, is that he was extremely good in the floater / mid-range area. And it was more so like 17 feet and in rather than like the long two. He would get 2 feet in the paint. His drive threat would be so potent that, you know, he'd have defenses backpedaling, and he was able to play in such a shifty manner that he would be able to get a good like 8-footer, 9-footer, 10-foot shot like in the paint. And he converted on those at a relatively high rate for how young he was. And so I think those are two promising markers of the deep ball eventually coming around. And if that comes around, he's going to be a very, very good player. If that doesn't come around, it's going to be tough. I think there's pathways to being someone who stays in the league for a very long time. You look at Dennis Schroeder; he's not a fantastic shooter by any means, but you know, he gets to the rim, he scores. Teams are still giving him money. Shout out Kings, bro! Like, good job. But you know, that's more the prototype you're looking for at that point. But what's going to happen is that three ball, I think, will eventually make or break his career. And look, we look at De'Aaron Fox. I think Fox is a bigger and a better athlete than Fears, but just in terms of like their downhill presence, what really unlocked Fox's career, in my opinion, was not him making threes, but shooting a ton. And when you are on the ball so much, you have to have like a little bit of you go under, I'm just going to pull the trigger, and you're going to do it 7-8 times a game, because when you do that, you will have nights where you hit 5 and you're just going to be unguardable, like for that game.
What do you have any like kind of strong or any impressions at all about what you think his ceiling might be as a playmaker, or the ability to develop some chemistry with Zion, who again is best on the ball, but like if you have someone like Jeremiah Fears, like I would assume the idea would be to run some stuff with the two of them together.
Yeah, I think that is honestly, I think I have more questions about that fit than the Queen fit with Zion. I've seen Zion make it work with bigs. With regards to guards who can't shoot, they can. Zion is not the most willing pick and roll player as a roll man.
Right.
And he doesn't, because he just doesn't view himself in that role. And so I think, look, this is completely me psychoanalyzing, but it's not reporting. It is a complete guess. But I think if Zion thinks he's better than the guard that he's playing with, like that's not something he wants to do, because Zion's like, I'm the best guard, But if he was playing with like Steph Curry, he'd be like, yeah, cool. Like I'll go set some screens for you, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But so with Fears, I think Fears is going to have to learn to set screens. Number one, if you want to play with Zion and you're small, you have to learn to set screens, because that is a favorable switch waiting to happen. If there is a center that's on Zion and you run an inverted pick and roll, and then now you got a mismatch on two ways with someone as small as Fears, like then you can really like work a two-man game. But with regards to playmaking, I think a lot of Fears' playmaking is going to be derived from his ability to penetrate and to score. So if at the next level he is an automatic paint touch, then he will be able to expand on his playmaking. Do I think he's going to be some genius level like playmaker? No, but like, can he get to like 6-7 assists a game just off of gravity and just driving kick stuff? Yeah, I think so. I
would have shooting around him. That's like the low hanging fruit, is if he kicks out. Like
and I think he's actually a better interior passer than he is, a pure driving kick guy. And I think he's actually pretty underrated, because he gets 2 feet in the paint. He'll go up with like a little pump fake, or he has a lot of shiftiness in a way that's like, again, this is a terrible comp because this guy's the MVP of the league. But Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has a very herky-jerky, catch you off balance style. And you see that trait in a lot of, again, guys who live at the free throw line. Fears has a herky-jerky, I'm going to catch you off balance. He has that change of pace that a lot of speedy young guards don't have. So he utilizes that, A, to get to the line, but B, to make interior passes. And so if you're a big man playing with him, he'll hit you on those pocket passes or throw a lob to you, because he'll get those 2 feet in the paint. The defense will come at him, and then he'll throw a pump fake and get someone in the air. And then that's either free throws or an easy dish, someone underneath, and it's a dunk. So with that regard, I can see it working with Zion. But the shot's going to have to come. I think that's really what it comes down to. The shot's going to have to come.
The Trey Murphy hype train is soaring. I went back and watched some stuff with him, because we're so far removed from the season. I feel like I forget about players that I thought I had a good feel for. The drives popped. The ability to finish at the rim, on looks that he created for himself, sort of popped. What popped for you the most from him last year when he was healthy?
The big thing, I think you kind of touched upon it, but I guess holistically it was this idea of cool, there's no Dejounte, there's no BI. This is my team, and with Zion, of course. And so, and what's funny is Zion even kind of, I think there's a post-game press conference. He was like, yeah, me and Trey are the guys now. And he embraced that additional responsibility, and offensively he delivered in a way that his efficiency didn't really dip. Because I think the concern with guys who typically take on a greater offensive load, especially in non-winning situations, is that they're getting up a bunch of filler or garbage volume up, and the efficiency is middling. And so it's like, yeah, they might be scoring 20 something points a game, but they're doing it on like league average or worse true shooting.
Mm-hmm.
And that never really happened with Trey. And I've talked about this concept with Trey for a while, is that there's kind of this, again, we talk about organizational responsibility, but there is an organizational responsibility when you have such an efficient weapon on your team, is to find the threshold where that efficiency drops. And they just really haven't pushed those boundaries yet, in my opinion. Last year, we kind of got a taste of what that could look like. But yeah, I think there's just so much growth still left, where it's like we haven't really hit the points of, okay, he's taking too many shots and they're not good. I think it's just cool. He's getting a shot. Great. Love it.
So what is like the area of growth specifically that like you're still kind of waiting to see if is it just raw volume in general? Is it something with his own shot creation, passing? What is it?
To be honest, it's more help from the coaching staff. It's drawing up, because it's a lot of it's like he's had to create for himself and just read and react off of what's going on in terms of flow. But they don't draw, like, you spend 15 seconds watching Golden State and you're like, oh yeah, they just threw like 7 threes for Steph. Or like when Clay was still on the team, it's like they had these set plays that you can always, like when they needed a 3 from Clay, this is what they were going to do. And that just doesn't exist conceptually on the Pelicans. They have like one thing that they do. They run this little ghost screen at the top of the key, and like Trey flares out, and like maybe he gets it from the ball handler, maybe he doesn't. But like that is it. There's no creativity with regards to the offense. So I don't think he's been fully weaponized in terms of. I just don't think the Pelicans offensively like work in terms of pick your poison. And so like I would love for him to be truly put in a position where the defense has to choose between some Zion Williamson action happening here or helping off of Trey Murphy there, or vice versa. And then that is when I think you will see not only the Pelicans succeed a lot, but like Trey, of course, be a big beneficiary, because their team's number one priority is going to be stop Zion every single time. That's going to be stop the guy that shoots 60% from the field.
Have you become exhausted by the Trey Murphy trade hypotheticals? That seems like he's been identified as that next player that's not going to be moved, but that everyone's going to cycle through the rumor mill of. The intel very much feels like it's just coming from another team, where it's like, yeah, they're interested in so and so, they've requested like. I just find that he just seems like the next player that's going to be that other teams are circling. That's just not going to be moved. And I feel like Herb Jones might have been that player too at one point.
Everyone wants talented multi-positional wings, especially in Trey's case that can shoot 50, 40, 90. Everybody wants those. And I think just covering a team like New Orleans, you just get used to, oh yeah, New Orleans sucks. Like, where can we send their best players? And so it's part of the business. And I think for anybody that listens to this, if a team wants to acquire Trey Murphy, think Desmond Bane type haul, if not more. He's younger. The Pelicans view him as a pillar. Again, publicly it's Zion, but I'll tell you, internally it's very much Herb and Trey are like the foundational pillars. So it's just putting that out there.
What would I get what you're saying about the Zion stuff, and it maybe be more of a marketing ploy. We've seen what Joe Dumars has said, really building him up and then talking about challenging him. What would you do, like? What would you do with Zion if you were running this team?
Is that before the draft day trade or after this draft day trade?
The Pelicans as they lay right now. What would be your approach to this?
Because my approach would have been just rip the Band-Aid off prior to that and commit to being bad this season. That would have been my approach. But now that they've positioned themselves in such a way that they're not going to have the liberty of falling into their own pick this next coming year, I would say the approach needs to go very strongly in the other direction. You have now made this enormous bet on Zion Williamson that this guy is going to be healthy and good for the majority of the season, enough to drag you into a playoff consideration, playing consideration. I think it's delusional to think if they're going to be anything more than that. But you should make the trades that make this team projected to be more than just playoff consideration. Just go all in at this point. Like, I don't think
you wrote something where you made the case for them to double down and trade for Walker Kessler, right? I remember reading that you did. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And look, it doesn't have to look, Kessler's not this exciting name. right? My
Transcendent rim protector, though.
trends.
So.
That's my big thing. Is like I'm not a believer in the center position. The talent they have in the center position on the Pelicans. I think it'll be one of the worst center rotations in the league. And so solidifying the rebounder and rim protector, which I think if you look at the Pelicans' projected starting lineups outside the center positions, there's 0+ rebounders. And if Fears is your future, like again, he's a small guard. You want the guy that to pair him with that is going to block everything and rebound everything. Like that's just how to make it work with a small guard. See Chris Paul and Tyson Chandler and, see Darius Garland and what's going on in Cleveland. Like anytime you have a small guard, that's just what you got to do. But yeah, so Kessler was just like, cool. Just you get him. He's extension eligible, or I think he's going to be restricted free agent next year. Pay him. You have your defense pretty much set for the next 5 years or however long you give him that money for. Zion can absolutely work for him. You'd probably be the best offensive rebounding team in the league, and you'd probably with Kessler and Herb, you'd probably be a top 10 defense like forever. And so that was my pitch with Kessler. It doesn't have to be him. Just go get somebody, some multiple somebodies. I think they're close. I think they have like 7 players by my count that can be positive NBA level contributors. If you can bump that number up to 9, I feel a lot better about this team, especially if there's some injuries down the road. I think when they won 48 a couple of years ago, it was because they had a ton of players who could just step in when someone got hurt. So like Dyson could step into a starting role. Najee could step into a starting role. Larry was there, and it was these defensive-minded dudes who, again, competent NBA players that you can trust. Be like, all right, they're not the most exciting guys, but they're not going to mess things up, and they're going to play very, very hard. And so I think that's just the Pelicans are not far from being a team where I could see myself be like, yeah, like this team could actually compete for the 5th or 4th seed, and things can be very exciting, but they're not at that point yet.
Through the lens of this coming season, I totally understand that. I'm just wondering if you gave Troy Weaver and or Joe Dumars truth serum, is the hope actually that Zion Williamson is this long-term tent pole for them still, or is it more about the hope of just, again, because what they did investing in these youngsters, is it Zion, we're going to be good enough this year, Zion will be really good, and he will have trade value after that season so that we can lead into more of a wholesale overhaul. Again, that's what I find fascinating about this team, is it just feels like there's warring agendas. You can call it 2 timelines, but it feels like warring agendas at play.
No, I think if you gave him truth serum, I think they would truthfully tell you that everybody's job is easier if Zion is that guy. Everyone wants Zion to be that guy. I mean, look, from a business standpoint, you're gonna sell out this stadium. You're gonna get sponsorship deals. You're gonna get all that associated merchandising stuff. From a winning standpoint, when you have a superstar, this roster construction is so much easier. You don't have to worry about, oh, how do I go get the guy? You just have to worry about how do I fit pieces around this guy. So I do think that everybody would love, okay, from here on out, Zion's just a guy that plays 70 games and he's a top 15 player in the league and he's going to make all NBAs and he's going to start all-star games. Everybody would love that. Dude, Adam Silver would be like, oh, I can get these guys back on the national television,
You can get them back on highlights. That's what
exactly. And then, you could like just have crazy divisional matchups with Wemby and Cooper and Ja and KD now, and Şengün. But there's a lot of star power in this division, and it's like that meme with the 3 dragons and the 4th one's just kind of derpy. Right now the Pelicans are that derpy dragon, and I think there's a world where they can realize their actual dragon form, but it's going to take some time.
I'm just already on record multiple times as saying I'm going down with the Zion ship on the court. His peak Zion is just the odds of you finding that in someone you've already drafted or anytime soon is I'll go down with the ship on it, which is why why I didn't love their offseason, because it's just like Derek Queen and Jeremiah Fears might work with him, but I would have preferred to have doubled and tripled down on guys that I feel better about. Like, I know these guys are going to work, and that we're not because one of Joe Dumars' justifications, I think, in one of his recent interviews was these guys, we can bring them along slowly. Like they don't need to shoulder too much. I didn't see or hear the interview. I remember like reading a recap of it, and if that's the justification, I don't know what I just don't know what that says about what is your investment in Zion to that point. But I'm going down. I'm sinking or swimming with Zion.
Yeah.
I know he hasn't been healthy enough, but peak Zion is just one of the most prolific basketball players in the league, bar none.
It would have been exciting. You think about what they traded away. They traded away next year's Pacers pick, which is 2024, or which is top four protected. Just that in and of itself is a potentially absurd thing that they traded away. And then their own unprotected pick. So and then you have CJ McCollum's expiring contract and Kelly Olynyk's expiring contract. If you took all of those things, put them together, and you're like, all right, I have $43 million in expiring salary and those two super valuable picks that I'm trading. What could they have gotten if they were like actually big game hunting, or like, if they were trying to build the most competitive team around Zion Williamson? And that's a question we'll just never have the answer to. But I do think there is a road not traveled where that's the route they went down. And they're like, all right, we're going all in on this current core. Like, we believe in Trey Murphy, we believe in Herb Jones, and we're just going to go and make some crazy noise. And I think there is a world where that team was going to be very, very formidable. And at least the people in New Orleans, they wouldn't have cared if you traded those picks. They would have been like, we're a playoff team, and we're super excited to go attend these games. And this is finally an exciting time in Pelicans basketball where it's like, they're just going for it.
You mentioned the center rotation before. What were your rookie year thoughts on Yves Missi and what's to come for him?
I thought it was interesting because I think he's both ahead of schedule and really, really far away. I didn't think that he would even be able to play the minute load that he played with the Pelicans because of all the injuries, and still look like he had pathways to contributing. I thought he was just going to be completely lost, where I think he stands to improve a lot, which worries me because historically these are not things that you see guys really improve over time. Is, again, defensive rebounding is a big, big issue. With him and Zion together, those units were, I think, like 0th percentile in defensive. I'm not even joking. Like, I swear it was like bottom 5 percentile when it comes to defense. Like, you go to clean the glass, it's like the deepest shade of blue you will see.
Yep, the 13th percentile in defensive rebounding with those two on the floor.
Okay, yeah, there you
Not
go.
great.
Yeah, not great. Yeah, so it's a struggle there, and I think Yves also, his style of like contributing offensively, he doesn't have the best hands, and he doesn't really catch the ball well in traffic, and so it's difficult for him to operate in those short roll spaces, which I think is so important because inevitably, like, Zion or somebody's going to get doubled off the ball, and if he gets thrown a pocket pass, it just takes a step too long for him to do something with it. And by then, like, the defense is converged and he doesn't have the physicality to score over that. And so he is someone who will, if he can get stronger and just become a better finisher at the rim. I think he was very below average finishing at the rim. He will have ways to contribute. I think he's more of a high energy bench big than he is someone that's going to be a long-term starter and like great rim protector. I think if you look at a lot of like advanced rim protection metrics, he was bottom 3 in those. And so again, a lot of it's just this constant changing of lineups around him with bad defensive talent. Like, you can only do so much when, the perimeter players you have to work with are Alfred Payton found off the retirement heap, the Brandon Boston Jr., Jeremiah Robinson Earl, like, those guys are not in the league anymore, like, for this season. And they played a ton of minutes for the Pelicans. And so it's really tough when you have a rotating door of guys just going in and out and you can't build any kind of defensive chemistry. So I will give Missi a lot of grace in that, especially being a rookie big man. It's a tough responsibility, but it's just that, again, impact wise, it was so bad with him. The on-offs were so bad with him that it doesn't give me much hope moving forward that this guy will be a positive contributor. I think he can get to be a rotation level guy who, again, off the bench, like, you play in 10, 15 minutes a game, he can come in and change the energy of a game. But, the starting center in the Western Conference, that's a tough ask.
The finishing stuff bothers me. Like his rim percentage actually increased with Zion on the court, which just lends further merit to Zion can play with any type of big, really. But
Yeah.
even if you say he gets better hands, it feels like maybe in some lineups he won't be, but there's always going to be traffic when you're looking at the Pelicans like supplementary spacing right now. And I don't know how they create like he can be table set, but I just don't know how much easier his looks at the rim can get until they again in some of the lineups, but like even on some of like the better looks he had, it just didn't. I don't know even what it was. Like what is like do you have any theories behind like well why is this dude like so below average finishing relative to other bigs?
Uh, I just think it's simple as touch. I just don't think
Okay.
he has the touch around the rim, especially if there's someone between him and the rim. But there was like again, there's plenty of times I don't know like what the genesis of it is with regards to his hands, but there's plenty of times where he's throwing like the most picture perfect lob or he's going for a dunk and he just whiffs it. And so maybe it's a grip strength thing. Maybe that's something he needs to train, or maybe there's some sort of more neurological thing that they need to work on with like mind hand connection or whatever it is. They should employ people that can work on this stuff and that make a lot of money. But and I think and I'm not saying they don't, they do. To be very clear, they do. But yeah, that's something they're going to have to figure out over time.
Can you explain the bet on Jordan Poole to me?
Troy Weaver knows him
All right,
and likes
done.
him.
Let's move on. I mean, like
I think
the
there is some more merit to it. I think they just think that he has more burst and wiggle than CJ, and that he has more. He has his best basketball is ahead of him, in their opinion. And he was in a situation in Washington where he was the primary advantage creator on a team that did not care for winning. And his play numbers kind of reflected that. And now you're going to task him to be someone that is more of a secondary guy playing against a bent defense with Zion out there. There is a world where he has the best year of his career. I can see it, but I think they just thought like we need someone that is capable of breaking down a defense off the dribble, getting to the rim, and that is younger than CJ McCollum. I think that's really what it came down to.
That's always been an understated part of his game too. Is he's always been a really good finisher at the rim for someone at his position. And if he's hitting off the dribble threes like he did last year in Washington,
Yeah.
that adds like a whole new element to the. But like, who is the last who's the last best off the dribble 3-point shooter that the Pelicans have had? And like Brandon Ingram really shouldn't count. I guess Trey Murphy has a chance to graduate into that role, but
Yeah, I mean it was CJ. Like CJ when he would have because he scored 50 with the Pelicans, I think a couple times. He's hit definitely 40 multiple times, 50 once. And anytime he had a big explosive scoring night, it was CJ just going crazy off the dribble. Like that's what it was.
anything on the Dejounte Murray timeline?
They haven't sent a firm update on him, but he's been posting videos of himself dunking and doing, 1-on-0 basketball drills. So I think that's promising. I would not expect him to return prior to Christmas, even if this calendar year, but it doesn't seem like there's been any setbacks, which is promising.
Whose role gets impacted the most if and when he does return when you're looking at Jordan Poole and Jeremiah Fears specifically?
It would
What
have
does
to
it say
be.
about Murray's role on this team that they have both of these players on the
Yeah,
roster?
no, I think that's a great question because that is, if you're Willie Green, are you going to bring one of those two guys off the bench with regards to Poole or Murray? And I think it's going to be a tough decision because historically he doesn't like to bench his vets. Well, who he does like to bench is Trey Murphy, and I don't think he can get away with that this year. I just don't think there's any world he can get away with that if he's still, the head coach of the Pelicans by the time Dejounte Murray comes back. The other thing is that when they acquired Jordan Poole, like Dumars kind of said something along the lines of like he's willing to do whatever like is needed. So I wonder if there's some sort of like implication there that if they need him to come off the bench, he will. Because CJ McCollum very much was not willing to come off the bench for the Pelicans. And that is a conversation they had with McCollum. And McCollum was, I think he wasn't wrong for this because he was like, look, I've been like the most reliable guy in terms of like actually showing up to stuff and not being heard and being available and been like the role model of like all these kind of, I've been like the most professional guy. Like, I'm not going to come off the bench. And yeah, and Willie Green was like, okay, like, I guess you're not going to come off the bench. Trey it is, and I don't think that's fair to Trey Murphy, but I can see why also like McCollum being the president of the players union, I guess former, now there's a new one, right? But McCollum being the president of the players union knows very much that anytime he's going to get into his next contract talks, if he's a guy that's coming off the bench, like those contract talks are going to be meaningfully different than if he's still a starter in this league, even though, any team that's going to be competitive is going to bring him off the bench. So I think there is some smart politicking by CJ to ensure he wouldn't come off the bench. And I think there is a world where they're like, cool, Poole, you're going to be the guy that comes off the bench, which, again, that's just setting yourself up for tough conversations unnecessarily, in my opinion, like the way your roster is constructed. You should proactively seek to solve these problems before they even become them.
Right.
So that's would be my approach on it.
The secondary wing rotation on this team feels like it could be rough because after Herb and after Trey, there's not a lot of bankable bodies. You have Saddiq Bey coming back from the ACL injury. Is Jalen McDaniels going to make this roster? Are they going to push the Micah Peavy button? Like, what is this like? Not that there's the solution. Like, what is the secondary wing rotation? Or beyond Saddiq Bey, who I'm assuming is the third most important wing on this team, like, what happens here?
Thoughts and prayers. I do think they believe in Peavy a good bit. Again, this is a Troy Weaver selection.
And defensively, he'll get Willie Green's attention. Maybe like
he
might
will
play.
He will, and I think they need more Peavy types on the team who are not going to need the ball. They're going to be low usage offensive players, and they're just going to go out there and play hard. They need more of that, the guy with the dog mentality. And so I do think Peavy is going to get run. I think he's going to get his opportunities. Beyond that, you're right. It's very thin and very sparse, and that's where I'm just like going back to our conversation earlier. I'm like, if they can just get like two more dudes that are just kind of slide in, that like, all right, they can function like rotationally. That would be really beneficial for them. There's been a number of free agents that have gone for like around the minimum that I'm like, this guy could have like helped the Pelicans. Wait, what did Amir Coffey sign for?
He didn't even get he had a training camp deal with the Bucks.
Wow. There must be something going on there, like with him as a person, or just like in the locker or something. But because like it's hard not to see like that guy being like, oh yeah, like you're.
Our Discord calls him Negative Tatum because of his on-off split.
Oh, okay, yeah, maybe that's it, right? He's just a very negative player. Okay, yeah, I didn't look into his on-offs, but yeah. So I don't know.
This would be a team. I'm like very much trying to get Justin Champagnie out of Washington because of how many wings they have. This would be a good Justin Champagnie team.
That would be a good Troy Weaver move.
That would be a good. I don't know. I would like it, so I'm not sure if it would be a good Troy Weaver.
Okay,
like, I'm in favor of it, so I'm not sure.
It depends on what the cost is, right? If it's an unprotected first round pick,
2031 first round pick, or
yeah, wait, yeah. Look, what's Kelly Oubre up to these days? Bring him back to New Orleans. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I just think like, yeah, if they had just like two more wings, or like, I think the most ideal solution, in my opinion, is they just again attach these picks to Dejounte, and they find a way to break that salary apart into multiple playable guys, preferably one at the center position and one at the wing position, but it doesn't have to be done all at once. You just go get one, and then whatever that remainder salary is, you can work with at the deadline or something later. But like, I think that would be the most ideal solution, but it require trading more picks.
That's what I was going to ask, because what do you think their appetite is for making, whether it's one way or the other, like reacting to what's happening in the middle of the season and either getting better or either selling off certain talent, especially when we know that they're not going to spend a ton of money either? Like, do you think that this front office is going to be willing to look at the results and then like react? Could they even be maybe like what you're saying is like be proactive and maybe try and go do that now before you even see what's happening? Like, what is going to be their appetite for making transactions, especially after witnessing the reaction to the transactions they made over the offseason?
I honestly think that this will be a change from David Griffin's time. I think Griff would have just like let the roster sit for a little bit and, either try to find, I think Griff tried to win the deal a lot. And so if it wasn't a crazy like win for him in terms of a deal, like he would just let that roster sit until it absolutely could not sit any longer. And then they would be forced to make a move. Or I think with Joe and Troy, I would not be surprised if like December 15th comes around and you're like, oh, they're making a move. Like, it's like, oh, Willie Green, like James Borrego's the head coach and they're going to go after this guy. Like, I think this group will be way more willing to fiddle with this roster, especially because most of these guys predate them, and so there's not that same attachment to the moves, right? They like to them, Dejounte's just a guy on the roster, not someone they moved Dyson Daniels and then other picks. You know what I mean? Like, so I would think that I would expect them to be more active.
Do you have any like strong feelings on the only two younger players we haven't mentioned, or Karlo Matkovic or Jordan Hawkins, who seems like he's eventually going to get the ceremonial salary dump from this team, right? Like that's where we're headed.
Yeah, Hawkins, I think there's a really, really good case for him to be made that they should not pick up his fourth-year team option. I think the deadline's coming up on that soon, the next month or so. And the case is that that's a $7 million option, and there's a ton of guys this summer that signed for $6 million and under that are just way better than him. I mean, D'Lo, LaRavia, those guys in Brooklyn that got those $12.5 million deals, Sharp and Zaire and all that kind of stuff. There's his skill set as a shooter, as a movement shooter, theoretical, because he's not been a good shooter since in the league. A ton of those guys went for the minimum this summer and last summer. You have Gary Trent, who's just a better player than him, and he's going for the minimum. Tim Hardaway Jr. didn't get a great, you know what I mean? Like, it's like that archetype of player. I think they should just make that bet in free agency and not commit $7 million to him, unless they're just very much like, we need the $7 million in expiring salary to match this trade. That's what it is. But yeah, I would hate for it to be, we got to send another second round pick to get this guy off the roster because we're trying to do some other moves and no one but wants him. Karlo is super intriguing. I just struggle to see where he's going to get minutes now that Queen's on the roster. I think that's like every bit of investment that could have gone to Karlo, which I'm not saying is the right thing to do. I'm personally not the biggest believer in him, but like if you were to be like, all right, this guy's an interesting athletic big who can shoot and do some hub style stuff at the top of the key, like we're going to give him 10 minutes a game or something, all those minutes should go to Queen, in my opinion. Now like there should be no conversation about who gets those minutes, because if Zion's healthy and Missi's healthy and Looney's healthy, there's not going to be minutes to go around, because I do think there will be, something we haven't talked about is I do think there will be a fair amount of small ball being played with no bigs on the court, and it's like Sadiq Bey as the center, or center.
My final question here before getting into the lightning round: what is their defensive ceiling if you're leaving this roster alone? I actually think they're going to be. I mean, they were dead last per cleaning the glass, so I think they're going to be better just by virtue of if you make more of your shots at the rim, you can get your defense set, and they were one of the worst teams defending after missing shots at the rim, but like. In a vacuum, they're not making any more major changes. What is the defensive ceiling of this roster?
If you told me Looney is the starter, I would say they have a top 15 defensive ceiling, if not top 10, because Willie Green is actually good at making the team perform better than expected on defense. I don't think if Zion's in shape, it's not fair to call him a bad defender anymore. I do think that is a narrative people need to catch up on, in terms of, when this guy is in shape, he makes the rotations. He's actually very much committed to defensive event generation. Herb and Trey, I think you'll see a big bounce back from them. Trey's like impact metrics took a huge hit because, again, I think a lot of those are highly sensitive to the quality of teammates that you play with, and the quality of teammates that he played with were just abysmal last year. And so I think you'll see a bounce back from them. And then Poole, honestly, I just don't see him functionally different than CJ, and Willie Green made a ton of lineups work defensively that featured CJ, Ingram, and Valanciunas, and they were a top 6 defense in back-to-back years when most of them were healthy. So I do think if Looney is the starter, I feel like they can be adequate on defense, mostly because Looney will get rebounds. That's the big one. You get, like, if you're decent, average, defensive reboundingly, I feel so much better about them because I do think they will generate a ton of steals and turnovers.
Are you ready to enter the lightning round cookie cutter portion of the podcast?
Do it.
So we've talked a little bit about various needs they have, but when you're looking at the roster today, what do you view as its single biggest need?
The center position. They need a legitimate starting center who can play 35 minutes a game and compete with all the other strong centers in the NBA who can rebound the ball.
I get it, But then, like after you gave up like to go get Derek Queen, it's just that's weird to say.
I think Queen is like, and at his peak, I think Queen will function as like a hybrid 4-5, and I think you will see him work like he did it in Maryland all the time. He played the four and he played very well off of his front court partner, and so he is someone that like you press the small ball, or like, I guess Queen at the center button in like lineups that you need to juice, but like over the duration of the game, you start him with a center, and I think he'll have the necessary playmaking and stuff to get it done. Same thing with Zion. Like that stuff I'm not that concerned with.
What is something about this team that's flying under the radar that you think deserves more of a spotlight?
I think this is actually probably not all that interesting to basketball fans. The thing that's flying under the radar is that they are doing really poorly on sales and sponsorships, and so they have a lease coming up for the stadium in 2029, and that is something that they have said over and over again that they will address to after they're done with the Saints side stuff. And on the Saints side stuff, they just agreed to one on the Superdome, even though it's not been like signed, sealed, and delivered yet. And so there's this very quickly approaching deadline on to do something with the Smoothie King Center. And they did this assessment study on the Smoothie King Center. Shout out Christian Clark for his incredible reporting on this subject while he was in New Orleans. And they found a ton of stuff in the Smoothie King Center that is just past its like life expectancy. And those are like critical systems that are past their life expectancy, because this is a building that was been around since 2002, 2003. So, most of the functions in there that were built to last 10, 15 years most, and we're well past that. So there's no real clarity on what's going to happen with regards to a stadium. There's not real room for renovations in that building because it's built like a coffin almost. Like it's just there's no room to expand. So from the business side of things, I think there's a lot of key decisions coming up, culminated with the fact that they've lost money on their RSN deal, transferring from Bally's to Gray, and they're not doing so well in sales and sponsorships. So I just think that is going to be a big underlying story this season and like the next couple of seasons. And until there is a more clear directive from ownership or the state or whoever on what's going to happen here.
Everyone's healthy. You're building a 10-man rotation for this team. Who's in it?
My starters, everyone's healthy. Oh, wow. Starters, I would go Dejounte, Trey, Herb, Zion, Looney. Bench, I would go Jose, Poole, Bay. So I need two more now. Missi can get in there. And I think that 10th guy I would toggle between Queen, Karlo, and PB, depending on what they needed. But I really don't feel good about that 10th guy.
Did you have Fears in there?
No. He said everyone's healthy. I can't crack him into the guard rotation. If my goal is to win as many games as possible, Jose is playing. He's an on-off god, and that's the minutes. That's again, you're talking about like warring agendas. That's going to be a big one this year. Willie's guy and Jose Alvarado has a very close relationship there, versus management's guy and Fears, who's going to get those minutes, because you can't play those two together. You shouldn't.
This question is, of course, matchup dependent, but what do you think will become their go-to crunch time unit?
I think it's going to be the small ball unit of Poole, Herb, Trey, Zion, and Bay. I think their go-to configuration will be closing with no real big on the court.
I think that makes that. I mean, that lineup could be devastating offensively, and like you said, if it's peak Zion, you probably get enough defense out of it. I would think
it's just the rebounding, so they have to live off turnovers.
Is there a weirdo lineup that you want Willie Green to try this season?
Pretty much anything featuring Zion and Queen. To be honest with you, like I just go humongous, right? Just go I'm trying to think how you can go.
Trey, Herb, Bay, Zion,
Yeah,
and
there you
Queen.
go. Queen.
Done.
There you go. Done.
That would be. I guess I mean Queen for yeah. Honestly, I'd watch it. Aside from Zion, I don't know what the creation looks like, but that's where you give Trey Murphy some extra license and
Just
Derik
run
Queen
like
can do some
handoffs with
stuff.
Queen and stuff, right? Like let Queen cook a little bit with that, and yeah, and honestly, like yeah, it'll be a lot of points Zion. It'll be, but I really do think you could let Queen cook with like if you want to set
There's enough
something up for
spacing
Queen,
around Zion and Queen probably to
yeah,
If Herb is shooting the ball like he's done in not last season.
yeah.
Is there anything before I get some predictions from you that we haven't discussed that you think warrants conversation before we move on?
No, I think we touched on the main stuff here for sure.
So, how many games do you see this team winning, and where do you see them landing in the Western Conference, factoring in the totality of everything, injury risk, potential trades, development, all that?
Yeah, I saw the Vegas over under was like 31.5, and I was like, man, that's really fair. I think I'm going to stick with that. I think that's ultimately where they end up factoring everything. But I do think it's more likely they exceed that than it is likely that they're just an absolutely terrible team, like bottom 3 level team. For 2 reasons. One, I think to be a bottom 3 level team, you actually have to intentionally try to reach those lower win totals. And that's not something they're going to be doing at this junction. And then the other thing is there is this hidden, like, okay, what if there is a panic trade where they just go get a dude or somebody, or multiple somebodies in the middle of the season. Might not be enough to bring them to the playoffs, but I think it's enough to take them out of the bottom tier of teams in the league.
I already see myself getting suckered into hitting the over, even though I basically said after everything happened, I was like, oh, this will be the first year I don't hit the Pelicans over and get heartbroken by it. So, is there a team in the West, presumably a playoff team, non-Oklahoma City Thunder division, that you find if we're putting the Pelicans into a playoff series with them, that you find a particularly compelling matchup, or maybe a team that this team matches up better than people would expect?
Who are we putting in the playoffs, first of all?
Well, I mean, there's the Thunder, the Nuggets, the Rockets.
Grizzlies.
The Clippers. Are the Grizzlies in the playoffs?
That's what I'm saying. Like, so you got the Clippers, and then I guess you put the Lakers in there, LeBron and Luka, right?
Yeah. Golden State. Even if you were to pick the Spurs, or that a lot of people just have them penciled in for a playoff spot this year.
I would say of those teams, probably they match up the best against Golden State, just because there's no interior protection on that team. The teams that I would look for the Pelicans to match up better against are the ones that have bad center rotations and they don't rebound well. And I think those are the ones where. But you know what's funny is Zion's teams play Minnesota better than they have any business playing Minnesota. And I think part of it's just like he just takes that Rudy matchup personally and he just goes and scores over and over. And he loves playing against Ant. I think those two are very close, and they view each other as high-level competitors. So if I had to pick a legitimate good team, rather than like, oh, I don't know about the Warriors, I would pick Minnesota.
All right, yeah, that's fair. I don't really have a good answer for the Pelicans. I would find them semi-intriguing if they're going to play Queen and Zion together against Houston. Would be an interesting matchup for me.
Houston scares me because they have so many guys that will turn you over. And the Pelicans' lack of ball handling, it's just like, man, Houston always comes in and you recognize, okay, like outside of like the main couple guys in the Pelicans, like they just don't have anyone equipped to deal with a higher level of physicality. And the Ime Udoka teams are just like, we're gonna beat you up. We're just gonna the Terror Twins are gonna come after you and snatch every single possession that they possibly can. And meanwhile, like if Reed Shepard's in the rotation, he's gonna be running around causing chaos. And Houston, it's like you would think that they might match up against just because people are like, oh, Sengun's not a good rim protector. And I just think Houston's a good team. Houston's a really good team.
And there's the whole don't want to play Luka or LeBron thing, but like the Lakers centers rotation isn't just like solved because they have DeAndre Ayton now. That would be that'd be a team that I think that New Orleans could really exploit in the paint, especially depending on what version of DeAndre Ayton you get.
Right.
This was great. As always, thank you for giving me so much of your time. You're just able to tell our listeners/viewers where they can find you and all the great work that you do.
Yeah, you can find me on Substack at intheknow.substack.com. all of our podcasts get uploaded on YouTube under that same channel, but I write on the Substack as well. And then you can find me on the various social medias, primarily on Blue Sky, at Fear the Brown.
Links to all that stuff will be in the podcast and YouTube description. Love in the know when you do podcasts. You, Jeremy, Mason, whole crew do a great job. Thanks so much for coming on again. And as you know by now, I'll be pestering you down the line.
Love it. Thank you, Dan.